Okay, the next most common question I'm getting is, how do we know what hunger feels like? That is so common with the majority of everybody I work with, because you're not taught how to use it. In fact, you're taught not to use it, to eat for whatever reason you want, however you want. On both sides, you're taught to not listen to hunger from the excuse me, from the diet industry, who tells you to eat breakfast every day, and which, you know, in square meals or random times, and hunger is such an incredible sense that your body has and is to be used for food. That's why it specifically is a way to tell you when to eat. I mean, when you're hungry, what are you thinking to do? You're thinking to eat. So there's a reason behind that sense, and if you don't have that sense, there is no reason to eat. So you have to trust it. But the hunger scale, I do not do a full 1 to 10. If you look at my book, I split it into 2. Hunger is a scale from 5 to 1, and fullness is in a scale from 6 to 10. So I split it in the center. And I found that this really is much better than 1 to 10. Because, if you go from 1, which is starving, to 10, which is so full you're going to vomit. The middle, being 5, is nothingness. So it makes sense to really think from more of I always use that bell-shaped curve, where the top is the 5-ish area, and then it goes down on one side and then down on the other. So the optimum point is with lack of hunger. And so, I describe the ideal point being 3.5 to 5.5. So 5 is nothing, no hunger whatsoever, no drive. 4 would be you're hungry, but you're still patient. A lot of times people would say when they go to a restaurant, they're more patient. They may be hungry, but they're more patient to wait. That's a 4. A 3, there's no patience anymore. So the time it takes to go from a 5 to a 4 may be 3-4 hours. I don't know, depending on your body and how much fat you have. But then the time it takes to go from a 4 to a 3 is going to be much faster, because it's accelerating. Once your body starts tapping into that blood glucose, it can be quick, and the larger you are, the faster your blood glucose is going to take a dive, which means the faster you're going to have hunger. That's why people who have obesity have more insatiable hunger when they finally get hungry. So once you get to that 4 point where you're hungry but it's patient, it's really important that you're prepared, you have food available with you, because you could be real hungry faster than you'd think. On the other side, obviously once you start eating, that you get that positive reinforcement from the mouth, but you also get it from your brain. Your brain gets active every time you eat, and so there's delight in food, and you're supposed to like the food you're eating. There's nothing wrong with that, but you have to be able to separate the emotion from that delight and realize that more of that food isn't better. That there comes a point where the body actually turns off that sense of urgency to eat, and that you need to just trust that you don't need any more, and the world isn't ending, and you can go back to that food when you get hungry again, and stop. And I usually tell people to stop once you've gone past the 5 to a 5.5, and 20 minutes later you should be at a 6, which is perfectly satisfied, nowhere close to satiation. Again, it comes down to that kind of rationing and famine type mentality. You would never eat till you're full or anywhere close to it if you were having to ration your food to last as long as possible. So really what it boils down to is eat as if you're having to ration the food that you have. Only eat when you're hungry, and it needs to be hungry enough, obviously avoiding extreme hunger, which is why I say 3.5, right below the 4, so you're still rational, and never more than what you'd need to just remove that hunger with confidence. And everybody, all of you have to really define that for yourself. That is the hardest part. Most people have a lot of anxiety the first week on the very low calorie protocol, because they have no idea what hunger feels like, and they have to learn their own body You know, so what I found, this helps. The more fat an individual has, I've noticed that they don't really get the same sense of urgency when they're hungry. They get more headaches and lightheadedness, which is something that the less fat you have, it comes on very different. I don't know. This is where you need to observe your own body and take all emotion out, like you're witnessing yourself from like a scientist would, you know, where you're just describing those sensations. You know, does your mouth get acidic? Your throat feel acidic when you're hungry? Most people, it comes in a sense of urgency. There's a time constraint involved where you can't wait any longer. You've got so much time before you're going to eat someone else, or you're going to, you know, eat your arm off. You know, the sense of urgency and time constraint is a very, very good indication of true hunger. Growling in the stomach, not so much, because the growling in the stomach is natural peristalsis and movement of the stomach muscle that occurs when there's food and when there isn't food. So what I've noticed, based on my observations, is that the more fat you have, the less coordinated true hunger is with that stomach growling. So you may not be hungry, like your leptin levels are elevated, but there's no food in your stomach. So you're going to hear growling, and that's not necessarily hunger. And the less fat you have, the more coordinated those actually become. Just, that's my observation. So anyhow, log, chart, you know, what's a 5 feel like? How long is it there? You know, when do you get hungry? What time was it when you got hungry? How much food did it take for that hunger to go away? Yeah, that's really important through the first phase. That way you really get in tune, and so that by the time you get into the second phase, or P3, you're prepared for it and you're confident in it, and you can test yourself with it. And each time you do a round, if you need another round, you get better and better at it. So I always have people, before they start the protocol, I actually have patients and clients practice for a week ahead of time, so that they're a little bit more in tune to it, but they're also aware where they're going to have the emotional struggles, where they know they're not hungry, but they can't eat. So it's not a surprise to them when they have this incredible emotional desire to eat with that HCG in their body. So it gives them some learning time before being under the constraint of the very low calorie protocol. Anyhow, keep on practicing that hunger, get good at your own body, and master the ability. The hardest part is, again, stopping eating when that hunger subtly goes away, because you're still going to have desire and it's still going to taste good, but you just have to be okay with stopping and whatever's left on your plate. So one of these days I'll videotape myself doing this so you can see how subtle hunger does go away. And I do throw food away, but a lot of times I save it for later, and it's exciting because I love food. So when I get hungry again, it's exciting to have good food left over. So, anywho, thanks. We'll talk to you soon.